Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here at KAKM for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. Up first on the warning map, we had a winter storm warning out for the northeastern Brooks Range. Actually, that's expired now. It was set to expire at 6 p.m. in 30 minutes, but it already has been canceled up there. That was out for the 3 to 6 inches of snow. Mostly fell overnight last night, and about 1 to 3 inches falling today. So that's ended in that area. We still have the flood advisory out for the Chena River upstream of Moose Creek Dam. That's out until 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. And then out here to the west, there's a high surf advisory for the north coast of the Seward Peninsula. 7 to 9 foot seas could cause some minor beach erosion in that area, and that's from Shishmaref westward, which includes Shishmaref, and again, that's out until noon tomorrow. Moving on to satellite imagery, we'll see yesterday we had quite a frontal system and low pressure area off the southeast coast. That brought all the rain in across the area yesterday, up across the Panhandle, but a lot of clear skies here over south central Alaska, especially south and east of the Alaska Range, but some of that clearing extending down into northeast Bristol Bay. Up to the north, a lot of clouds yesterday. There were a few breaks, but not very many up over the upper Yukon Valley areas, but lots of clouds. And then the storm there dropping down from the Arctic, bringing the gusty winds, rain, and snow to the Arctic coast and North Slope areas, with then back out to the west here, a lot of moisture streaming westward across the northern Bering Sea and then sliding down across Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. Mostly just high clouds at this time yesterday across that area, but a lot of moisture came on through in that flow. We'll see today that band a little farther to the south, but that brought some rain today to Kodiak Island, and even heavier amounts occurring over the Bristol Bay area. Both Togiak and Pilot Point picking up over ½ an inch of rain in the last 24 hours, with rain and fog extending across the Pribilofs today and then back down into the central Aleutians. Shemya had dense fog, visibilities running 0 to a quarter mile earlier today. Otherwise, still had rain and showers going along the southeast coast here, with looks like becoming more showery out along the outer coastline there, but the whole system moving very slowly eastward. Lots of clouds coming into south central Alaska, but began to clear out over the Susitna Valley, and that's now down into northern Cook Inlet. Some good sunshine this afternoon. Partly sunny skies over the Copper River Basin. Also some clearing out here over the Yukon Delta, Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta, but back up there to the north, a lot of clouds across the Arctic coast, low pressure right up on the North Slope area there near Barrow, and that kept it cloudy all through the interior. We had the snow today, 3 to 6 inches falling in the last 24 hours, mostly overnight last night, and again 1 to 3 inches falling today up over the eastern Brooks Range area. Winds a lot lighter along the western and central Arctic coast than they were yesterday at this time, but still some scattered rain and snow showers. A lot of clouds and areas of light rain or showers here across the northwest coast areas and the Seward Peninsula. Winds kicking up 15 to 30, gusts 35 miles per hour there at Nome, and areas back to the west and through the Bering Strait area there as higher pressure and the gradient between the high here over Russia and the low pressure area that's slowly dropping southward there across the north slope, tighten the gradient up again. And actually this system will be dropping southward over the next couple of days. Otherwise, the rain in Bristol Bay today tapering off, had some showers around Kodiak Island earlier today, and also some rain and showers from the Tanana Valley southward across the Kuskokwim Valley right up to the western Alaska Range. And again, pretty cloudy skies here over the North Gulf Coast. But there was some clearing over the eastern Gulf Coast right through this area. And then again, the rain here across the southeast coast, where amounts today ranged from Wrangell picked up about 2.5 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. Ketchikan had 1.5 inches in the same time period. And Wrangell picked up 1 1/3 inches. So a couple of wet days here, Friday and Saturday here for the southeast coast. Should be drier tonight, and then more rain moving in. A system right through here is going to develop and move up to the northeast and bring more rain and wind into that area tomorrow. But the forecast for tonight, rain changing to showers and scattering out late tonight, but still pretty wet here. Low pressure over the northeast Gulf of Alaska will keep periods of rain from about Elfin Cove, possibly as far west as Cordova, with some showers up over the Wrangell Mountain areas. Look for showers at the lower elevations of rain there along the Alaska Range and into the Susitna Valley areas, or actually maybe the Talkeetnas, but scattered rain showers back to the west here with gusty northwest winds all the way down, gale force winds around Kodiak Island and the Barrens back into Kamishak Bay, with skies kind of partly to mostly cloudy through that area. Scattered snow showers again along the Brooks Range, areas of low clouds and fog along the eastern Arctic coast, and then high pressure here over the Bering Sea. That should begin to dry it out over the Pribilof Islands, with the main rain band now shifting southward here to the Fox Islands. Chance of rain there all the way back to the central Aleutians. It's not a really strong system at all, just a lot of moisture with it, and it's not moving too much. The high pressure here to the north and to the east, kind of holding it in place. And so there's a chance of rain for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow. Periods of rain, fog, and drizzle all the way back out to Atka, and then it dries out a little bit there toward Adak. Otherwise, look for rain and showers here from the north, well, about the Denali Park area through the central interior down into the Kuskokwim Valley, with some scattered showers possibly over the Kilbrook and Auckland Mountains. Scattered showers, Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound areas. Winds beginning to lighten up now across the Chukchi Sea. And rain and snow showers depending on your elevation through the Brooks Range and possibly the Koyukuk Valley areas, but should be a mostly sunny day. The strong offshore flow down sloping winds off the Alaska Range, gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour here across south central Alaska, and down across Kodiak Island. That wind flow picks up some moisture, so that low pressure area moving into the north central part of the southeast coast. So gale force winds for the Clarence Strait area, and gales also off the south coast with rain heavy at times. Heaviest amounts again falling over the southern areas tomorrow, but rain will extend from the Queen Charlottes all the way back up into the Yukon, with showers following in behind. And we'll see that low still off the coast for Monday. So look for periods of rain here over the well, again, from the Queen Charlottes all the way up into the Yukon, rain and showers, and extending off the coast, quite an area there. So a couple of wet days coming up for the Panhandle again, and should be mostly clear and sunshine here across Prince William Sound. Still gusty north and northwest winds to westerly winds through Passage Canal, but not quite as windy as you'll see tomorrow. Around Kodiak Island, gale force winds continuing in that area back up across the Barrens, but high pressure building into the west central interior. One center down here over Bristol Bay kind of ridges up and links up with that center along the north slope there. So mostly sunny skies over the western and central interior. Should be a mostly sunny day here across the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta with light winds. Sunshine for Bristol Bay. Variably cloudy in the Tanana Valley with some lingering showers up here over the Alcan border up to the eastern Arctic coast, where those northwest winds will be on the gusty side, but much lighter winds and possibly some clearing farther to the west there. And rain finally sliding into the Alaska Peninsula with a chance of rain for Cold Bay, but periods of light rain, drizzle, and fog for the eastern Aleutians, all the way out to the central Aleutians. Again, showers following in behind out toward Chimia. Temperatures this afternoon all in the 50s here for the southeast coast, ranging from 52 at Juneau to 59 over at Annette. That same temperature recorded at Yakutat this afternoon. These are all mid-afternoon temperatures, mid-50s Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast areas, lower to mid-50s here for south central Alaska, but Talkeetna did push up to 57 this afternoon. 46 at Gulkana. Lower 40s, lower to mid 40s for the Tanana Valley there, except Tanana up to 48 degrees. 50 degrees today in Fort Yukon, but a much cooler 42 over at Bettles. 36 at Anatuvik, 37 at Arctic Village. Temperatures along the Arctic coast, mid 30s to lower 40s. That temperature pattern extending down into the northwest areas there. Seward Peninsula, both Nome and Golovin had 45 today, as well as Unalakleet and Ammonik, all at 45. 46 in McGrath with some rain going on earlier, and then 52 at Sleepmute, 53 at Bethel, and 50 out at Macoriac. And moving on to the Bristol Bay zone area there, lower 50s. Lower 50s to lower 60s here, False Pass up to 61 with some pretty gusty winds up to 50 miles an hour occurring across the Alaska Peninsula today, with 63 at Unalaska, lower 50s for the Pribilofs, Atka up to 64, and then Shimia with the low clouds and fog only 51. Moving for the lows tonight, upper 40s to lower 50s here for the southeast coast, and then looks like lower to mid 30s here for the Arctic coast and North Slope, with temperatures down near or below freezing here for the Brooks Range, locally down into the Koyukuk Valley areas. Otherwise, mid to upper 30s here to near 40 out along the southwest coast, upper 30s for the Bristol Bay area, mid to upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and then the mild 50s out here over the Aleutians, mid 40s for the Bering Sea, and mid 30s here to lower 30s along the eastern border, Northway, Tok, Eagle, probably dropping near or below freezing tonight. And then for the highs tomorrow, upper 30s to lower 40s here for the North Slope and the Arctic coastal areas, with upper 40s to lower 50s here along the southwest coast, 50s again for the Panhandle, the Aleutians, and much of the Bering Sea. Flying weather shows marginal VFR along and north of the Alaska Range, all the way around from the Tanana Valley into the Kuskokwim Valley, extending out to the southwest coast, where it could be some VFR right through here, then more marginal VFR out over the northern Bering Sea, with a lot of IFR from about Nikolsky all the way out to the Komodorskis, and marginal VFR there for the Brooks Range, North Slope, and the Arctic coast. Could be IFR there around Barrow due to low clouds and fog. Passes, Anatuvik looks marginal tomorrow, as does Adigan. And Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, lowest conditions on the western entrances. VFR to the east. And for Rainy, that same pattern, lowest conditions, marginal VFR on the western entrance, better to the east. Windy, lowest on the north entrance, better conditions to the south. Isabel, same pattern, lower conditions, marginal VFR on the north entrance for both Isabel and Mentasta. Tanita, VFR. Portage looks VFR for tomorrow. Chilkoot and White, occasionally marginal. Freezing levels shows a cold air mass here over the state for late August here, 2,000 feet all the way down into the Susitna Valley and the Copper River Basin, 4,000 to 6,000 foot freezing levels here over the southeast coast. And then still quite a gradient here out over the southeast Bering Sea areas from 4,000 feet up to 14,000 feet over the west central Aleutians. And looking at icing above about 4,000 feet here from the Alaska Range back to the west and northwest there, with more icing with that frontal boundary coming into the central and possibly the eastern Aleutians, mostly above 10,000 feet though. And then look for some occasional widespread moderate rime icing as that system moves into the southeast coast, all above about 6,000 feet. Well, tomorrow we have a jet sailing down right through this area up to 100 knots, and one upper level low over the north central interior, another one off the southeast coast, and a couple of waves will be moving down. Looks like the last one will be on Monday, and then this area high pressure will build in the first of next week. 9,000 foot winds, 40 to 50 knots right across Kodiak Island, pretty brisk winds all the way up to the Seward Peninsula. 3,000 foot winds, 35 to 50 knots there, strongest right across the Barren Islands from Kamishak Bay right out into the western Gulf of Alaska. Much lighter northerlies up to the north, southerlies 25 knots over the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, look for occasional moderate chop here at the Kenai Peninsula, western Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, and Alaska Peninsula. But the western Alaska Peninsula pretty smooth. Bumpy conditions right up the west coast to the Seward Peninsula, and then smooth over the north central interior to the Arctic coast. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
The beach on the southeast side of Montague Island stretches for nearly 80 miles of pristine wilderness. At least it looks pristine from a few thousand feet up. As our helicopter descends towards the shore, big chunks of white styrofoam come into view.
You see all the big globs of styrofoam? That's all tsunami debris. Yeah, there's more styrofoam out here. There's no question.
Chris Pallister would know. He's president of the nonprofit Gulf of Alaska Keeper. The group has been cleaning up marine debris that washes onto Alaska's shores for 11 years. And when the tsunami debris began arriving last spring, their job got a whole lot harder. Pallister has visited Montague Island nearly a dozen times since then. And by the time we land and step onto the pebble beach, he's shaking his head in disgust.
I mean, you're basically standing in a landfill out here.
Pallister points to an area scattered with styrofoam bits smaller than packing peanuts.
So you see what's happening here with all the crushed up styrofoam now? This is what we're worried about. This styrofoam's just going to get all ground up. And you can see there's just be billions, trillions of little bits of styrofoam scattered all over everything.
The smaller it gets, the more concerning it is.
The smaller it gets, little pieces like this, is virtually impossible to clean it up. I mean, to clean this up right here, you have to take out all this organic matter with it. And, you know, extrapolate that all up and down this coastline. It's kind of an impossible job.
The trash is not just an eyesore. Pallister says voles, birds, and even bears are eating the styrofoam and plastic. He's also worried about chemicals. Among the debris, he finds containers that held kerosene, gas, and other petroleum products. Even the little containers worry him. Sifting through the trash, he picks up a small blue bottle and unscrews the cap to inspect its contents.
I have no idea what this was. It looks like just dish soap, maybe, laundry detergent, but it's empty, which is maybe not a good sign. But there's thousands of bottles like this all up and down the coast, from small household chemical items to drums full of chemicals, big industrial-sized drums.
Marine debris is not a new issue in Alaska, but the Japanese tsunami has magnified the problem many times over. Pallister says the tsunami debris doesn't have the visceral impact of the Exxon Valdez spill, with oiled animals and blackened coastlines, but he thinks in the long run it could be a bigger environmental disaster.
In a lot of ways, it's a lot worse than the oil spill, both in the geographic scope of it and the chemicals that are coming with it. And who knows what the impacts are going to be. And they're going to be really difficult to measure because they're spread out spatially. And, you know, it's going to be a very difficult scientific issue to sort that all out, I think.
Officially, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has only recorded 20 tsunami debris items that have landed in Alaska, but the agency will only confirm an object if it has a unique identifier that can be traced back to Japan. The state of Alaska does not use the same strict standard. Last summer, the state paid for an aerial survey to inspect 2,500 miles of Alaska's coastline. Elaine Bussey Floyd is acting director of the Division of Environmental Health. She says the survey identified tsunami debris all along the flight path from southern southeast up to Prince William Sound and out the Alaska Peninsula.
There was tsunami debris literally on every beach that was photographed. They took over 8,000 pictures, and it was more widespread and greater quantities than we even expected.
But so far, there has been minimal funding for cleaning up the debris. Governor Sean Parnell didn't include any tsunami debris funding in his budget. NOAA is figuring out how to distribute a $5 million gift from Japan, and Alaska's congressional delegation is working to get federal funds. But tsunami debris cleanup money was stripped from a bill for Hurricane Sandy relief that passed this week.
Look at this mess here.
Back on the beach, as the waves crash in, Chris Pallister says the debris could have serious impacts on fisheries and subsistence resources.
I don't know if it's being taken seriously enough. I don't think a lot of people that are going to be impacted by it know how bad it is right now. And until that gets out, maybe not much is going to happen. But I think we're kind of getting to the tipping point now where a lot of people in the state and federal agencies realize the gravity of this situation, and they're all working pretty hard now to get a handle on the scope of the problem. and trying to develop funding sources, but as of yet that hasn't happened. But it's a huge problem. It's going to take years to clean this mess up.
Pallister guesses it will take tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars to remove the debris. On this day, though, he has to leave it all on the island.
All right, we better go back.
Okay. We take off in the helicopter and head north along the beach. Pallister looks out the window at all the debris below and says it just goes on and on and on. On Montague Island, I'm Annie Fight. It's a brilliantly sunny day in early March, and Pallister's visiting Montague to get a handle on how much new debris washed up on the island over the winter. He also needs to check on debris his crew collected into heavy-duty bags called super sacks last summer. Pallister wants to make sure they held up over the punishing winter months. Pallister measures debris not by the pound, but by the ton. And on outer Montague Island, he estimates there's 20 to 30 tons of debris per mile. He guesses about half of it is from the tsunami and half is the usual marine trash that's been washing up in increasing amounts for decades. Last summer, he used funding from the legislature and other sources to begin cleaning up the first 3 miles of the island's coast.
There's another almost 70 miles to do on this shoreline. And we spent probably close to 60 days cleaning these few miles that we did here. So this is a huge, huge problem. This island is really bad.
The state identified Montague as one of 9 priority areas for tsunami debris cleanup. There are other hotspots from the southern tip of Southeast and as far west as the islands off of Kodiak. Japan gave the United States $5 million for cleaning up debris in all the West Coast states. So far, Alaska has received the biggest chunk of that money, $1 million. Alaska's situation is vast coastline, often inaccessible even to small landing craft, combined with huge quantities of debris. He says it will cost millions more just to clean Montague.
There's actually a lot of new stuff here. People always ask me, why do you do this? Why would you keep doing this if it keeps coming back? And I just tell them that you clean your kitchen counters. This is where we get our sustenance in this state. The intertidal area is where a lot of our fishing resources and all that came from. So I say this is our kitchen counter, and a rational person keeps their kitchen counters clean.
Southwest winds 30 to 35 knots for the south coast, and north to northwesterlies 15 to 25 here for the north coast. And Clarence Strait, southeasterly gales up to 40 knots tomorrow, seas at about 8 feet for Stevens Passage, northerlies at 20 with 4-foot seas, and lighter winds for Lynn Canal. And then for Monday, we've got southwesterlies 25 knots here for the south coast, and the north coast kind of a variation, westerlies at 25 to easterlies at 15. Windier conditions for northern Lynn Canal, northerlies 25 knots in the forecast, and then winds coming down, but still small craft advisories for Clarence Strait. For the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, small craft advisories for those northwest winds, and 30 up to 40 knots gales here for the Barren Islands, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, and Kamishak Bay, otherwise north to northwest 20 knots for Cook Inlet. And for Monday, gale force winds continue here for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, and also along the east side of Kodiak Island. Pretty brisk northwesterlies also for Shelikof Strait, and northwesterlies 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast. Out toward the west, Bristol Bay northwest 25 knots, Castle Cape up to Sitkinak northwesterlies at 30 with higher gusts, but lighter winds from the north-northwest at 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. And the outlook for Monday, southeast 15 here to southwest 15 for the peninsula, so lightening up on those winds as high pressure builds in, northwesterlies 20 to 30 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, southeast at about 15 knots, otherwise southwesterlies 10 to 20 knots for the central Aleutians, and southeasterlies up to 25 there for the western zones. And then the outlook for Monday, still 15-knot winds for the Fox Islands from the south or southwest, otherwise 20-knot winds here into the central Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots, and that same wind pattern extends all the way out to the west. And for the southwest coast, actually from St. Lawrence Island, all along the southwest coast, northwest winds at 25 knots with 6 to 8 foot seas. Northeast 15 or east-northeast for the Pribilof Islands, northwest at 15 for the northern Bering Sea. And for Monday, westerlies at about 20 for St. Lawrence Island and northwest 15 knots coming down there with high pressure right up along the coastline, and seas running 4 to 5 feet with southeast winds there on the west side of that ridge, 20 knots for the Pribilofs and the St. Matthew Island marine area. Up along the Arctic coast, northerlies 20 knots here over toward Demarcation Point. Otherwise for the eastern and central coast, easterly winds at 20 knots. Northerlies here on the west side, and still from Wales up to Cape Thompson, northwesterlies up to 30 knots with 11-foot seas. And then the next day, much lighter and more swing the direction around the southeast at 10. Light winds here, Point Hope and Cape Lisburne, and then the western Arctic coast, pretty light southerly winds, but those winds increasing here, northwesterlies 20 to 30 knots along the eastern Arctic coast. And for tonight, showers here for the southeast coast, but areas of rain with this low up along the eastern North Gulf Coast, Cordova over toward Elephant Cove and Yakutat. Scattered showers up over the interior. Windy conditions, again, gale force winds here and small craft advisories for Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island, and breezy conditions all the way up the west coast, continuing 15 to 30 knots with higher gusts. And rain, heavy at times with gusty winds. The heaviest wind and rain will be over the southern southeast coast, but it'll be wet right up into the Yukon. Sunny and windy here over south central Alaska, Kodiak Island, and the North Gulf Coast. Some rain over the central Tanana Valley and the Kuskokwim Valley with rain and snow showers to the Brooks Range. And then finally some rain slips on into the Alaska Peninsula. High pressure clears it out here in the west and stays sunny and windy here over south central Alaska, Kodiak Island. Stays wet over the southeast coast. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.